Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another video. In today's video, we're going to be covering the patch 7.31D, and before we start off, before we get into it, I know everyone's probably disappointed with this patch. I know people were expecting like 7.32, and then when they announced it was a letter patch, everyone was kind of like, oh man, we're not going to get a big update, but then they did say, oh, this is a bigger update than, most other letter patches, so people were still like, huffing the copium, like, oh, maybe we'll get some big changes, and it just is another pretty disappointing patch. It just, yeah, maybe it's bigger for like a letter patch, maybe, but still, it's not a very significant patch. There are actually a couple item changes that I think will change the game significantly, but other than that, I mean, it's just kind of a boring patch. I don't think that a lot of the good heroes have been nerfed enough, and I don't think a lot of the bad heroes have been buffed enough. I will say this, for the last year or so, it just seems like whoever is patching this or whoever is, in charge of this doesn't know what they're doing or doesn't care, because, like, here's a good example. Medusa has been good for an entire year. This hero's been nerfed, in like 10 patches in a row, but the nerfs have been so insignificant that this hero is still good, like, to this day. Now, it's finally falling out a little bit. Like, you didn't see it as much in the major recently, but it still was picked sometimes. It's still pretty popular in pubs. Like, it's kind of insane. That has almost never happened really in Dota, where a hero like that is just so good for so long and doesn't fall out of the meta. It just feels like there's only two options, really. Either Ice Frog doesn't care, and he's just kind of like phoning it in, which kind of sucks. I mean, if that's the case, it's like, I understand he's been doing this for so long. I don't really blame him too much. Then he probably needs to hand it off to somebody else, because at this point, everyone's getting disappointed. It just seems so stale. Like, either Valve doesn't care, Ice Frog doesn't care. It's just hard to say. So he should probably hand off the changes to somebody else, because it seems almost like an AI is doing it, or somebody that's not even paying attention is doing it. The other possibility is that Ice Frog took a break. He just needed a break from Dota, which is, that's completely understandable as well. And then whoever they have doing it, whether it's like an AI plus a guy, just isn't paying attention to the meta, doesn't really understand Dota, doesn't understand the meta, maybe is low MMR, whatever it is, and just doesn't want to, rock the boat, because they don't really understand the game all that much, so they're just trying not to make insane changes that break the game and everybody hates, which I kind of understand too. But at this point, it's been a year, like, since we had a good patch. I mean, I think the Shard patch came a year and a half ago or something like that, and there were some big changes. I remember it was like an Alchemist patch and all these different things, and then the Shards came, all these big changes happened. That happened like early 2021 or something like that, and since then, we've honestly had almost nothing, I think, that really has impacted the game. Like, the meta barely changes, from patch to patch. So it's just overall disappointing. I hope in the future we get some, big updates, some kind of, at least, even if it's not big updates, at least updates that make sense, and we stop getting these nonsensical changes. The thing that makes me so mad, is when they buff a hero in one way and then they nerf it in another. Like, it just makes me so mad. I've never seen that before in Dota, where they just like reduce its attack damage but buff the strength gain or something stupid like that. Two insignificant changes. One is a nerf, one is a buff. It's just so insane that to me shows that it's not Ice Frog doing it, honestly. That is the evidence to me that Ice Frog is taking a break. I think the biggest copium that we can have, like the thing that we're hoping for, that I think everyone is hoping, is that there's like the great confluence or whatever it's called, where Heroes of New Earth, all the heroes now that it's shut down are like ported over to Dota 2, and we get this huge new update at the end of the next TI, like in the next winter or whatever, and this is big change along with the DPC changes, like all of that happens at once. That would be great. I'm not really counting on it. I don't think that's going to happen, but I'm hoping for it. I really hope that that is going to happen, and maybe Ice Frog is working on that, and somebody else is just kind of making small changes to keep people at least placated until then. So that's what I hope is happening. We'll see what happens into the future. But regardless, anyway, that's my rant on all the patches and my opinion on the patches in general. I think Dota is at a really, really good spot, actually. I mean, it's fairly balanced. I think almost anything is viable. Like, things are really cool with the way that we see, like how Seb is just playing Wind Ranger or Wind Runner, whatever. I always forget the name of that Wind Ranger. In the major, no one else is playing it. Like, all these things are really cool. I really do like how the state of the game is right now, but it's just, people need it to be mixed up. Like, heroes that are strong need to be nerfed. Heroes that are weak need to be buffed. Like, things need to change, maybe small map changes, whatever it is, XP changes, creep bounty changes, whatever it is. Like, they need to do something to make it at least seem fresh, even if they don't want to ruin the whole thing. So anyway, that's my rant. I'll be done. We're going to jump into it now. I'm going to go over everything. And like I said, not a huge patch, not that many big changes. There are a few item changes that I will get to shortly that I do think will impact the game a lot, though. So in any case, let's just jump into general updates. Marcy added to captain's mode. I think everyone expected that. I think Marcy's at a decent spot. We'll see if it gets picked up in the DPC going forward. They also changed Roshan to now attack wards like Healing Ward from Jug, like the Pugna Ward, these kinds of things. And he also like kills them in one hit. I think he also will hit Wraith Pact, I guess, as well. So that is kind of a nerf to those things around the Rosh pit when you have these big fights, which is kind of the time when you need these things the most, when you can just like sit one of these wards down. And it just does so much around the Rosh pit. That's probably one of the better places to use those kinds of items and abilities. And now, if you try to go in the Rosh pit and then you leave, Rosh will attack your ward. So that is kind of important. It's actually an important thing, but it probably won't matter to many of you. Just maybe in pro games, it'll have some impact in general to, fights and these kinds of things around the Roshan pit. And then the Mind Stealer creep mana aura was reduced. Not really a big deal. Now we can get into the item updates. And like I said, there are a couple items that have been changed that I think will have big impacts. So first we can see the Bracer change. The regen was reduced. I think, if you know the meta, a lot of offlaners were buying 2 bracers, like rushing 2 bracers. And I think that may stop now that the HP regen is reduced. It may still be a thing. Maybe you'll get 1, but I don't know that you're going to rush 2 anymore now that you have basically half an HP regen less. Hey, but maybe, I don't know, and it's still strong enough that you're going to buy that. But that's kind of one of the big things, one of the big reasons this was nerfed. Null Talisman, the obvious big change. This was mainly a Storm Spirit nerf. Storm was so good. It was first picked in the major a lot or banned. So the mana cost reduction, that's completely out the window. Now it just grants max mana, which is good for Storm and some other intelligence heroes. But I don't know that that's really a big deal, to be honest. Like, it doesn't seem that good. I could be wrong about that. Obviously, the mana regen is increased, so that is important. But we'll see how this Null Talisman change works out. Like, is it worth buying these anymore or not? And whether it's worth buying or not is really kind of a big deal for a lot of mid laners, because there are a lot of intelligence heroes that buy Null Talismans and go mid, and kind of how good this item is will determine a lot of the meta from the mid lane, like what they're buying, but also what heroes are good and those kinds of things. So this could be an important change. That could be a very important change. Next, we'll go to Healing Salve, and this is the first of the 2 big changes. Obviously, Null Talisman's pretty big for Storm, but not really too many other heroes. Healing Salve, on the other hand, huge for the entire meta, for pretty much every single game and every lane, pretty much except for mid, both side lanes. The meta was supports buying salves and healing their cores. Now, that just isn't going to happen, because the duration of the Healing Salve is halved when cast on an ally. So you're just getting half the heal. It's just not as good. The cost is decreased a little bit to make up for that, but because now people are going to have to buy their own, like carriers are going to have to buy all their own Healing Salves, these kinds of things. But that's going to have a huge effect on the lanes, because I think that's going to help the off lane in general, because it was largely the carries that were getting a lot of the salves from their 5 position supports. And the other thing is you're going to want to, pick carries and other heroes that lane better and don't need to buy as many salves and aren't as greedy and all these kinds of things, just because you're not going to get spammed salves from your support. So a huge change. I think it will have a lot of effects on the meta, actually. And a lot of people are calling for it, because it was getting kind of weird, especially when you go into a lane, you expect your support to have salves and then he doesn't have them. It's just weird. So I'm glad that this was a change that happened, and I think a lot of people were calling for that. And then the other big change is actually BKB. The cooldown is increased from 75 to 90, and that's huge, because obviously BKB is one of the main focal points of Dota. A lot of Dota is balanced around BKB. If you didn't have this item in the game would be completely different. It almost would be unplayable in some ways. It just makes the game what it is to have this item. So in the past, if you didn't know, BKB started off with a duration of 10 seconds, went all the way down to 5 with each use. They changed that from 9 to 6. And so because of that, basically what people started doing is they started getting relatively early BKBs and just popping them, as soon as they needed to. Like, you get ganked, you just pop it, you run away. You get, ganked, you pop it, you TP, all these kinds of things. Like, you just pop it and you don't really care about the duration, because 9 to 6, not as big of a deal as 10 to 5. Well, now, although they didn't change that aspect of it, the fact that it's a 1.5-minute cooldown is actually huge, because that's going to open up a lot of time. Like, 1.5 minutes is a long time in Dota for, the enemy to make moves when they make you pop your BKB. So in the past, 75 seconds, still a big deal, but not the biggest of deals. You can pop it, you'll have it up, fairly soon. It's not a huge deal. Now it's 90 seconds. You have a minute and a half. The enemy, that's 3 creep waves are spawning in the time that, you don't have BKB. So it's actually a huge deal. And I think this is going to have huge ramifications on the game because now you're going to want to buy, or you're going to want to pick heroes that don't need to buy this item as much. Maybe it's going to be delayed. You're not going to, buy this item until a little bit later because it's just more punishing when you have to use it, all this kind of stuff. It's going to have a big effect on the game, I think. Anytime they change BKB, it has huge effects on the game. So look out for that. So that's BKB. Next, the rest of the items, pretty straightforward. Butterfly buff, no one was buying it. Crimson Guard's been dead for a while, so they buffed that. Lincoln Sphere's been pretty popular, so they nerfed it just slightly. Satanic has been really popular for a long time, so they're nerfing the lifesteal. It's not just like you're, 0 health. You click it, and then suddenly, in like 3 hits, you're back up to full health. It's not as good, which makes sense there because it's been so popular. Eternal Shroud has rarely been bought on too many heroes. It's like basically Necro, maybe Bristleback. Not too many heroes buy Eternal Shroud. A lot of heroes actually have just been buying casual hoods and keeping them as hoods, so it makes sense that they're going to buff Eternal Shroud here. Just more magic resistance, and the cooldown is decreased, so that makes sense overall. I don't know if it's going to be enough to really make the item good for other heroes, but still generally decent. Bloodstone, small buffs because they changed this item a patch or two ago. I think in the big, the 7.31 patch, they kind of reworked the entire way that Bloodstone works. And now the only hero that buys it is basically Leshrac. So they're going to buff this item, but I still don't think, no matter how much they buff it, unless they make it absolutely insane, no one's going to buy it unless, it's basically Leshrac, maybe Pudge eventually. I don't know. Very few heroes are going to buy this, regardless of the buffs. I just think that they're going to have to rework it again if they're going to want to make this a viable item in Dota right now. Next, we have Revenant's Brooch. They buffed it a little bit here with the cooldown, other things like that. It doesn't consume attacks when hitting magic immune targets. You can activate it again to remove all attacks and start the cooldown because now the cooldown doesn't start until after the attacks run out. The mana cost is increased, so just kind of slight changes to this, but I don't think any of these small minor changes are going to make this item more viable. It's very expensive. It's kind of a late game luxury item. It has some uses. I've seen some videos of people, using this in a really big way with Sven and other things where you're just doing absolutely insane damage because it converts your physical damage to magic. So I think it actually does have some uses, but I don't think it's enough right now to make this a very popular item unless we find some weird broken thing that some pro player finds out. But otherwise, I don't think it's that relevant. Wraith Pact, the obvious item that needed huge nerfs. The model size was increased by 50%, which I think is legitimately a nerf because in the chaos of fights, it was so hard to see where the Wraith Pact was. You saw the thing emanating, the little wave coming out, but it's where the heck is it? It's so tiny, you can't even find it. And then the attacks to destroy was reduced, which is important, but still, 4 attacks is still a lot. It just still feels bad to attack that thing 4 times in the middle of a fight. Very annoying still, but now that the gold bounty has been increased to 100, it is kind of more worth it to get those attacks in, to get that gold bounty, especially if you're a support, something like that. So I think these are relatively needed nerfs, and then small quality of life change where it follows you when you cast it. But I think basically overall this was nerfed decently, but I still think it's going to be pretty popular. I still think it's pretty good because they didn't really change anything about the aspect of how, it was reducing damage. It's not as good, but it's still fairly good. I mean, only 1 attack and a little bit more gold. I don't think that's going to be that big of a deal. I think everyone's going to still buy Wraith Pact. And there's just another example of one of those where this thing is just completely broken and they barely nerf it. It's just kind of weird that happened. I still think it's going to be really popular. It's probably going to be bought every single game still. So now we're going to go on to the hero updates. First is Alchemist, and we're going to just go over basically every hero, but I'm only going to really focus in on the updates that matter, that I think are really going to change heroes. Otherwise, I'm just going to tell you whether they were buffed or nerfed really quickly because some changes are almost insignificant. So first we're going to start with Alchemist. Alchemist, the shard was buffed. They keep buffing this potion, this Berserker potion, this shard. They want this thing to be relevant. I think they want Alchemist to be a support or something like that because they keep buffing this thing. And then they changed Chemical Rage to make it a little bit better. But I don't know. Maybe Alchemist will be a support or just better in general. I don't know. But they keep buffing this to try to make that relevant in some way. I don't know what's going to happen. We'll see. Maybe Alchemist 5, Alchemist 4 will be a thing. Who knows? Bristleback, some small buffs, just a cast range increase for the goo, and then the threshold is reduced, so you're going to be, spitting out more quills from the Bristleback when you get hit in the back. That's important, I think. It's pretty good overall because you're going to be doing more damage based on your HP, but I don't know if this is enough to really make him relevant. It's only 10 damage. It's not a huge deal. Centaur, the stun duration increased. not a big deal. It's 0.1 second max level. Like, who cares, honestly? Chaos Bolt here. On Chaos Knight, he did need nerfs. He was very, very strong. At the max level, it's not reduced at all. 150 to 300, 150 to 300. It's just in lane, it's a little bit less damage, which I actually don't think matters. I mean, yes, it makes his laning stage not as strong, but he's still insanely tanky. He's still super strong. You don't really need the Chaos Bolt's damage. Like, you're going to be hitting people, and that's how you're doing your damage. So the Chaos Bolt is honestly for the stun mostly. But regardless, I think that's a decent nerf, but just not enough to make the hero irrelevant. And then the Chaos Strike, the lifesteal was reduced overall at max level by 10%. But, I mean, yes, this makes this hero not able to sustain in fights as much, but really, I don't think that matters, because this hero, the whole idea of this hero is you pop your illusions, you go in on one guy, you blow him up. And you're still going to be able to do that. Yes, you're not lifestealing as much, but who really cares? I mean, the lifesteal part of it is almost so that you can jungle. Like, you're still going to be able to jungle. Like, you're still, you don't really man fight on this hero. I mean, you can. That is something you can do. But it's more like you use your illusions and you blow somebody up. Like, that's how the hero works. So I don't think this really matters, honestly. So this hero, look out for Chaos Knight. It's still going to be strong. Not as strong, but still strong. Clockwork does more damage to creeps. Not a big deal, but you can jungle, I guess, a little bit better. I don't know. Not a huge deal. You can just farm more on Clockwork. CM... strength reduced, but the cast range increased and the slow duration increased. So this is the kind of change where I don't understand. Why are you reducing her strength by 1? Like, it's like a meme that this is happening. Like, what is that? And then small buffs. I mean, that's okay, but not, I just don't think it's that relevant, but makes it a little bit better. This hero can be pretty good, so we'll see if that makes this hero better overall. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, but could be. Darkseer, agility increased, literally irrelevant. Mana cost reduced, I guess a little bit. It's a little bit better in the laning stage, obviously, because you're not going to be using as much mana. And then the damage on vacuum is increased, but that's only early on. So again, not really relevant. I don't think that matters. Just the laning stage is better for this hero, but whatever. Dark Willow, Shadow Realm cooldown reduced. I actually think this is pretty significant, because even though later on the cooldown is the same, early in the lane now, 20-second cooldown, pretty significant, because you know, you can spam this in lane a lot more. So you're invulnerable in lane a lot more. This is actually one that it's a small change, but I think it's significant, and it makes the laning stage a lot better for this hero. Dawnbreaker, strength growth reduced. Another one where you're reducing something, you're nerfing something, and then they're buffing here. Critical damage increased, cooldown reduced. So I don't really know why they do that. It just seems insane to me that they do that. But hey, I mean, the critical damage is increased, which I think that's pretty good, and then the cooldown is decreased here, 90 seconds at max level. That's pretty significant, a minute and a half only for Solar Guardian. So we'll see if that's enough to make this hero relevant. This hero's kind of been dead ever since it was introduced. I mean, it was introduced, it was pretty good, and ever since some nerfs, it just has never been picked up really all that much. So we'll see if this is enough. I don't think it will be, but who knows. Dazzle, Shard Hex duration increased from 1.5 to 2. That is actually, I think, fairly significant. I mean, a 2-second stun, I mean, I know it's only 0.25 seconds, but 2-second stun on that shard is kind of insane. But this hero is really weird because they changed the way the ultimate works with bad juju and good juju. They buffed it here, so they buffed this hero overall. I don't know if that's enough to make it relevant. We'll have to see. It's just kind of a weird hero. Disruptor, duration increased on Static Storm to 6 seconds. I think that's actually significant. This hero's fairly good. I think overall, I think a couple patches ago it was good and then got some nerfs, but you know, longer ultimate, that's always going to be good for this hero. So look out for Disruptor. Dragon Knight, agility decreased. That kind of makes sense, but whatever, not a huge deal. And then shard duration reduced from 10 to 8, and the AoE reduced from 450 to 300. I think that's pretty big. This hero was picked a lot. It was nerfed in the last patch, or last letter patch, I think, at least. And then it was still fairly popular, but I think now that it's getting, you know, nerfed a little bit more and more here, especially with the Fireball, which was one of the biggest things that made this hero good because of the timing you could get it, the farm you could get, and all that kind of stuff. This could be fairly important, but we'll see. A small nerf, but still makes sense. Level 25 talent for Drow, multi-shot increased by 1, literally irrelevant. Earth Shock, the stun duration increased early on the early levels by 0.3. Again, kind of irrelevant, but a small buff. Elder Titan, the bonus speed per creep was increased by 50%, which is significant, and the cooldown was reduced early on. So I don't know if this is enough to make this hero more relevant, but Elder Titan's always kind of one of those where it's either really good, like first picked all the time in pro, or kind of irrelevant, never picked. So it's always one of these things where, you know, is this enough to make Elder Titan relevant? No? Okay, then it's never getting picked. Is it really good? Okay, well, it's going to get picked all the time. It's kind of weird how that works with some heroes like this. Ember Spear, base strength increased by 1, which completely irrelevant again. But then the cast range is reduced for sleight of fish, which is actually fairly relevant because, you like to get, heroes and creeps and everything right on the edge of that. So it's actually significant that this is reduced. I don't know that it's that significant, but it does nerf the hero in general. Enigma, I think, needed a nerf, but they just basically made the cooldown increased by 10 seconds. I mean, yes, that is important because you're not going to be able to use it as much in lane. So that is a nerf in general to the laning stage. Annoying to, you're super annoying when you are able to basically use demonic conversion all the time to basically deny range creeps in the lane. So it is important that this was nerfed here, but I don't know that it's a huge deal because you're going to be putting a lot of points in this anyway. So at the max level, 1 second, who really cares? Faceless Void, some buffs here. The Ag Scepter radius was increased by 50, and then the second attack delay increased from 0.33 to 0.4. I think that second buff there, the time lock change, was actually pretty good for the hero because now you're kind of going to be locking people in place a lot more. And if you get that double time lock, like that double bash there, I mean, that's a long stun that you're having people stunned in. I think this overall makes the hero better, but it's not super significant, but it is a small buff. Grimstroke, radius reduced and cooldown increased. This hero was pretty good, picked a lot in the last major, so it makes sense that this was going to happen. I think this is actually a pretty big nerf just because you're not going to be able to spam it as much, and then that radius being small, I mean, you always catch people on the edge of this thing, so that's actually important, I think. Huskar, inner fire damage rescaled, literally irrelevant. It's better for laning, but they nerfed this hero's regen, and they changed the bug on because there was a bug with Armlet that made it do less damage to you, and then they changed that. They fixed it, so this hero's been irrelevant ever since that, and I don't think this is going to change that. Yes, you're better in the lane for getting last hits, but whatever. IO attack speed bonus rescaled. Still good late, though. 5 attack speed, kind of whatever. Just early on is not as good for laning, but I don't think that's a huge change at all. Keeper of the Light, this hero definitely needed to be nerfed, but they didn't really nerf it that much just early on, and it's only 15 damage, so I think that's almost irrelevant, not a big nerf. Legion Commander, the cooldown on Moment of Courage was changed, especially early on, so I think you're going to have a way better laning stage. This hero actually might just be a pub stomper. It already is, but now it's insane. 1.9 seconds compared to 2.3. You're just going to be hitting Moments of Courage all the time in lane. This hero's already a great laner. It's going to be even a better laner now if you max out Moment of Courage. Kind of crazy with that. And then the small talent change, not a huge deal. You will do more damage, but it's kind of whatever. Number of targets increased by 1 at each level, I believe there, yeah, and then damage rescaled a little bit as well to make it a little bit better. I think this is kind of his worst ability. You only use it really in lane and to slow people to set up your stun and stuff like that, but now they're making this a significant damage ability. It also jumps to a bunch of targets, so that is important. I don't know how important that is. I'm not a Leshrac player, so we'll have to see, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. Mana cost reduced here on Lich. Kind of important, but not really. Just later on, it's a big deal, but whatever. Lifestealer, I think this is actually a pretty significant change. Enemy max health as damage increased on all levels, and at the end, it's increased by 0.2 to 1.4%. 1.4% of your max health with every hit. I mean, that is actually a lot. You have to be careful with these percentage-based damage abilities. 0.1% is significant. So this hero gets 0.2% more damage on its right click every single time it hits you. That's pretty significant. I think that's a lot. It's not current HP, it's max health. So keep that in mind. I think this is actually a pretty big buff to Lifestealer. It seems small at first, but I actually think it's pretty big. Lena, the stack duration on Fiery Soul was increased from 15 to 18. This is a much needed change. I hated Lena the way that they changed it because it's just so awkward. It's great for laning, but now it's weird because if you're pushing a tower, you have to run over to, slave a bunch of neutral creeps or something, but then it's not long enough that you can wait for the next wave. It's just so weird. With that 18 seconds, that 3 seconds extra duration, I think it makes it a little bit better. I'll have to, see how it works in the game, feel it out, but it definitely will make it better that you're not going to feel awkward and you're going to be able to push towers and do things like that a little bit better. I still think overall the Fiery Soul, the way it works is not as good because this hero can't gank. You can't just buy Shadow Blade and, full combo one person, because if you use 3 spells on them, it's just not going to be a big deal. It doesn't really get you as much attack speed. You're not going to be able to solo kill people in the side lanes, these kinds of things. You have to get to a fight. You have to kind of either set up in a fight where you hit multiple people with your spells, set up a fight near creep waves, near creep camps, these kinds of things. You just can't gank like you used to. It's just not as good. And then the damage for the shard was increased, but that's irrelevant. Lion, the projectile speed for the Earth Spike was increased. That's kind of important because this hero, sometimes you would like throw out an Earth Spike and it wouldn't hit because it like feels like it comes out so slowly. So that's important. And the Hex cooldown early on was decreased, which is significant because I feel like 1 point in this ability, usually honestly Max's ability lasts anyway, but 1 point in this ability, it felt like you used it and then you 30 seconds just feels like forever for a stun to come back off of cooldown. So now 24 seconds, a lot better, especially early on when you put 1 point in it. Luna used to be good, got nerfed a bunch. Now the damage on Lucent Beam was increased. That's pretty significant. Not as much for the lane, but even later on, 20 damage over time. I mean, that's pretty good with ultimate and everything. And then the Eclipse Lucent mini stun increased, which is sort of significant, but not a big deal. But some buffs to Luna, pretty decent. Lycan, the critical damage increased a little bit. That's pretty significant. I mean, this hero's decent. I feel like these kind of heroes like Lycan, like Beastmaster, when you put them over the edge of being good, it can be so annoying to play against them. So we'll see if that's enough. This hero does a ton of damage already, so that's a lot. Max level 220, that's kind of crazy. Magnus here, the slow increased on Skewer, and the Shockwave Scepter change. But I don't think anyone's buying Scepter, so I think this is completely irrelevant. The slow increase is significant, but not really a big deal. So I don't know that that's enough to really make the hero better, kind of like it was in TI-10. Marcy, so they added this hero to Captain's Mode now, so you can play this in pros, and they actually buffed it a little bit, so the cooldown on the ultimate here was decreased overall, so 60 seconds for the ultimate, which is significant because this is the main way you're going to be doing damage on this hero, from the carry position at least, but even from the support position, like having this ultimate up so you can do more damage in fights, these kinds of things is important. And then Dispose, the throw distance reduced, and then like kind of a bug or whatever was fixed, I guess, for this. I think that's actually important because you obviously want to throw people and you want to stun them, but sometimes it felt like you were throwing people so far, it like took a while for your teammates sometimes to get in range to actually hit them and stuff. So I think this is actually a buff there on that throw distance decreasing there. Mars, one of the most popular heroes for like a year or so now, maybe even like 2 years. This hero's been just so good for so long. So they reduced the base damage and the stun duration of Spear of Mars was reduced a little bit. Don't know if this is enough to make this hero bad, but it's just not as good as it was. Night Stalker had, I think people weren't playing it all that much, but it did have kind of its time to shine in the major, so they did nerf it a little bit, but not really significant. Omni Knight kind of had his time to shine a little bit early on, I think in the 7.31 patch or whatever it was, when they changed a little bit of how the hero works, but then just fell off. Like it wasn't picked at all really in the majors, which is interesting to say the least, but now the damage was rescaled a little bit. Not sure that's a huge deal, just better for laning overall. And then the talent was changed there a little bit, which I don't think, again, is all that big of a deal. I don't think this is enough to bring this hero back. Pangolier, much needed nerfs. This hero was very, very good and has been good for a pretty long time, ever since they changed the way that the slow works with the shield crash instead of on your proccing your passive, I believe it was. Now this hero just had so much better, a much better time laning because you could just spam shield crash. So now the cooldown was increased for that, so you can't spam it as much in the early parts of the lane. So we'll see if that's enough to nerf the hero or to make it not as good. It's still pretty decent, but you know, well, this is kind of a tipping point where is this enough to make the laning stage bad where you just don't feel good picking it, or is this kind of irrelevant for the laning stage? We'll have to see. I'm not a huge Pango player. And then the roll-up duration was reduced from 4 seconds to 2.75. I think this is a pretty decent nerf, but I don't know that you ever really need that full 4 seconds anyway. So I just don't know that that's all that big of a deal, but it is fairly significant. I think this might... Actually, I don't know how long is Yule's. I don't know how long Yule's is. I don't think it's 2.75. So if 2.75 is longer than Yule's makes you go in the air, which I think it is, because I think Yule's is only like 1.5 or 2 seconds, something like that, then I don't think this matters that much. But in any case, a decent nerf there. PL hasn't been popular for very long, but you never really want to see this hero get buffed too much because this hero is cancer. They just reduced the cooldown on Doppelganger, but only on the beginning level, so the laning stage is a little bit better for this hero. And then Juxtapose damage increased on level 20. I think that's decent, but not a huge deal. We'll see if this is enough. I mean, having your illusions do more damage is significant, and that's 3%. So, hey, maybe that is enough of a buff to make this hero relevant, especially because you have a better time laning now. Pudge, the hero that everybody loves, that everybody wants to play all the time. The base damage was increased by 3 on this hero, and then the damage block from the Flesh Heap, the new way that they added this weird damage block to Flesh Heap. They buffed it at all levels from 5 to 7 at the beginning, and then from 20 to 28 at the last level, which I think is pretty significant. I think this damage block is kind of cool. I think the way that it works is pretty interesting. And the fact that this hero has more base damage now. I mean, this hero already has significant base damage. I just don't know that this is going to be enough to make this hero relevant, but people pick it a lot anyway. And who knows? Maybe we'll see like off lane or mid pudge come back. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe it's still picked as support, probably. But hey, this damage increase and the damage block is significant. And then the rot slow, hey, that's always going to be good too at level 10. Pugna, definitely a hero that needed nerfs, but really they only nerfed the Netherward. The mana, the used mana reduced, or damage per used mana reduced overall by 0.25 at last level, and I think at all levels there. And then damage reduction reduced from 25 to 20 at the last level there. So that is significant. We'll see if that's enough to actually make the hero relevant. I don't know. I'm not sure. It's still pretty good. I mean, you still do a lot of damage. You still have a lot of reduced damage. This combined with the fact that Wraith Pact still does a lot of reduced damage in that AoE. I mean, I still think Pugna can do all the things that Pugna support does, where you're just healing your allies, you're doing all this kind of stuff. You're still super annoying with your save, with your Decrepify, all that kind of thing. Netherward's not as annoying now, but I mean, Wraith Pact is still just as good in a lot of ways with the damage reduction, so who knows. I don't know if this is enough to kill Pugna, but maybe it is. Ricky, small buffs, not really a big deal, honestly. Just better in the laning stage, but who really cares? Shadow Demon, the poison damage for each hit is increased, but I don't know that this is that big of a deal. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I mean, who knows? It might make the hero a little bit better, but whatever. Shadow Fiend, max fear duration increased. I mean, it's annoying. Don't get me wrong, this is annoying, but it's 0.3 seconds. I don't think that matters. Honestly, I don't think that matters. Like I said, it's annoying, so if you play Shadow Fiend, if you're good with that, yeah, it's a buff, but whatever. Strength growth reduced by 0.2. Again, why are they doing this when the mana cost is decreased on Arcane Curse and the 20 talent is buffed as well? So they buffed it here, but then they nerfed it. This kind of change, dude, it just makes me so mad when I see this kind of change. It enrages me when I see this change. It's like, why are you guys doing this? Like, why are you nerfing his strength growth and then buffing two other things? Like, why? Stop. Why? They're all three of these changes are almost insignificant. So why do this? Why do this, guys? Please, why? Anyway, and then Slark again. Here's another one that I just don't understand. Base damage increased. So they gave actually him 2 base damage in the range here, which is actually significant for last hitting. And then the duration rescaled from 15, 30, 60, 100 to 20, 40, 60, 80. This is good early on. So you can get 1 or 2 points in this. Usually get 1 point early on in the lane, but now you can get 2 points. 40 seconds is pretty decent. I mean, that's a long time with those 2 points. So you're going to build up some essence shift. The annoying thing is that they decreased the last level by 20 seconds. If you guys didn't know, you used to be able to get, with the 25 talent, 440 seconds on essence shift, like a year or two ago. And that's like 7 minutes. It's insane. Now you went from 7 minutes at level 25 to like not even 2. And here, that's a minute and 20 seconds. I just don't understand. This hero, Slark, has like never been good. I mean, it's been like a year and a half, 2 years since this hero's been good, and they just keep nerfing its late game potential, which is so annoying. I mean, this hero's laning stage is already so bad. I mean, they did buff it a little bit. Maybe it makes the lane good enough that this hero can actually be viable. It's just so annoying when they keep nerfing the last level of essence shift. It's like what the hero is built around, and now it's like, yeah, you built up a bunch of stacks, but you better do something with that in like a minute or you're screwed. It's so annoying now how they did that. They keep nerfing the 25 talent too. So I don't know. I like to play Slark. I know a lot of people don't like Slark. It's one of my favorite heroes, but I just can't believe they keep doing this. It's like, it makes me cry. But hey, the laning stage is better. Maybe it's a little bit viable. But the fact that they nerfed the last level, just come on, guys. Why? Stop doing this. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Like strength growth reduced here. I can't say that for some reason. Strength growth. Like why am I having so much trouble saying that? Whatever. And then buffing here, like buffing the hero overall, but then nerfing it. Like stop it. Bad Ice Frog. I'm going to smack your hand. Stop it. Sniper here, damage increased on Assassinate. 700 damage is insane. Level 3, that's actually kind of crazy, but I just don't know if that's a lot. I mean, it's 50 damage, whatever. First level, it's not even changed. Sven attack speed increased. I mean, that's good, but I mean, will that make Sven relevant? I don't know. Techies, I think, Techies is super annoying. I think Techies was kind of popular when they changed it, and then it kind of fell off, but now the bounty was reduced, so proximity mines are better, and the magic reduction is increased, which is kind of crazy. 25%, that's a lot. And now the slow is increased too. I mean, this hero's already super annoying. I can see this hero being picked up a lot and getting really popular and being so annoying in your pub, so watch out for Techies. Terrorblade, bonus attack damage increased by double on the first level, so looks like Terrorblade's getting picked like basically in every single NA game, so every NA DPC game, watch for Terrorblade to either be picked or banned. Watch out for that. RT is going to play this hero and only this hero for the next like 4 months. Just watch out for that. Timbersaw, base strength increased by 1. Dude, that's a huge buff. Huge buff. Absolutely. This hero is super OP now. 1 strength. Holy. Max distance cast range reduced, which is kind of annoying. I hate when they do this because this specific kind of change really annoys me because it like changes the way that people learned how to play the hero. Like when you're playing Timbersaw, I'm not a huge Timbersaw player, but like when you're playing the hero, you have a feel for how far the Timber chain can go. And so now that they nerfed it, like it's just a little bit less than it was. So you have to relearn that entire mechanical skill of what tree to, what's the furthest tree you can hit from where you are. That's so annoying. If you're going to nerf the hero, just nerf like the damage or something. Nerf something where it's not like you have to relearn the mechanical part of it. It's a nonsense change. It makes no sense. This hero, like this is a specific kind of buff or nerf that I just don't understand. Like both this is the same kind of thing with Slark here and with Silencer. Like why are you buffing the strength and then doing this to making a mechanical change? It's very annoying. I don't like that at all. I don't think it's super relevant, but I mean the Timber chain distance is relevant. It's just kind of annoying. Tinker cast range increased, not a big deal. Mana cost reduced, again not a big deal. Not going to make Tinker relevant. It was nerfed to the ground after the few patches ago when it was very popular. Tusk, the snowball speed increased, and the tag team slow duration increased. I think this is actually pretty relevant because a lot of times you'll have trouble catching people like that are pretty fast with your snowball. So now you can catch up to them a lot quicker. You're going to have a lot easier time hitting your snowballs. And then the tag team slow duration is significant. I know it's 0.1 second, but it's already super annoying to deal with this in lane. And now it's going to be even more annoying. Ursa, move speed slow increased in the early levels. And that's actually pretty significant because 22% move slow buffed by 6% early on. That's a lot. So now you're going to get 1 value point in this like you usually do anyway. And you almost don't even need that Orb of Venom. But if you do get it, man, you don't even need stuns because you're just slowing people like crazy, hitting them a bunch. I think this hero was already good, and now I think it's even better. Look out for Ursa. Ursa might be the carry of the patch, to be honest, because this is a significant change. This hero already has a great laning stage. It's even better now, so watch out for Ursa. Vengeful Spirit, damage increased by 2. I don't care. Nobody cares. Visage, max damage per charge reduced. Not a big deal. Just does less damage. This hero was pretty good, though. Makes sense. Warlock, they've been buffing this hero over and over. They're trying to make this hero relevant, so the movement speed was increased on the hero. Pretty slow hero overall, but now 300, pretty decent. Actually, I think now 300, is that average or is that above average? I can't remember what average is, but now it's pretty. I don't think this is a slow hero anymore. This is pretty good, if not pretty fast. And then the max slow on the early levels of upheaval are better, and the cast range is decreased for Chaotic Offering for some reason. Who knows why? This hero's not good, but they decreased the cast range. I have no idea why. Like, what is that nonsense change? They're just going to have to change upheaval. I'm telling you right now, they have to get rid of the spell altogether or change it, like basically where you cast it on the ground, you can walk away. It just has to be a spell that you don't channel anymore. Like, if they made this a thing where you don't have to channel it, it's a completely different hero. It's actually getting picked, I bet. But with it making you sit there and channel it, be like, oh, and you just slow people, like, it's not good. I'm sorry, it's just not good. Maybe also, I think it like applies over time too. If they made it like instant, maybe that would be a little bit better. I don't know. But still not relevant. I don't think this hero's good. Geminate attack for Weaver, the bonus damage is increased. I mean, I guess that's okay, but not super relevant. Wind Ranger, nerfed because of Seb. The shard push speed was reduced. Not a significant nerf, but enough because now you need only a little bit more movement speed to get out of it, or to at least like not be stuck in place, which is significant. Witch Doctor, another hero that actually is pretty strong. I mean, I think this hero is pretty strong, even though it doesn't get picked all that much in pros. So the cooldown was reduced to 60 seconds on Death Ward. So that's a lot of uptime on that spell. It's a pretty big damage spell, pretty significant. And then the 20 talent of the 15% Maledict burst damage increased to 20%, which is pretty significant. I think this hero is just kind of getting onto that tipping point where it might actually be pretty good even in pros, because it does a ton of damage. I think the biggest problem with the hero is just the fact that like the cask is not very reliable. It's not a reliable stun from a 5 position or 4 position. It just can be very annoying that you can't get that reliable stun, but overall it's pretty good still. And then Zeus, they're trying to make this hero relevant with this new heavenly jump, the duration of the debuff, and I think, just the debuffs in general, which is, I think attack and move speed slow is increased overall by 0.6 seconds in the beginning, and then the same at the end. So it just makes the laning stage better, which is what they're trying to do with this hero. I think what they should do is they should just add the shard, like the old passive that it had, and they should just add it as part of heavenly jump. They should just combine it and give him a new shard. And then the hero might be OP, so be it, but at least maybe it'll get some picks and some play in competitive. So that is the patch, the general updates for 7.31D. I hope you guys aren't too disappointed. I think there actually are some significant changes in this patch, especially the healing salve, the blacking bar, some of these other things. Maybe not exactly as big as we would have wanted. Maybe not all the nerfs and the buffs that we would have wanted, etc. But hey, whatever. I mean, this game is at a pretty good spot. There are some significant changes here. There are some significant things like the Null Talisman nerf, all this other stuff. You know, Wraith Pact did get nerfed, some of this stuff like that. So I think there are some significant changes, and we'll see a different meta develop, even though the changes don't seem that big. So as always, guys, thanks for watching. As always, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. Join the Discord if you haven't already. If you want coaching, you can go to my Patreon, and you can also support me there if you want to see more videos like this into the future. So as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.